me on my bio. And I also want to draw your attention to, these are kind of like precious pages. We're honoring Robert Becker tonight, and he is, how many are familiar with Becker? This is the book that he is known for. This is great, you're going to be introduced to a wonderful new person. Okay, in a whole new field of medicine. And if I could have bought a copy of this book for each of you, I would, okay? So what I did is give you the meat and potatoes of this book. Don't lose this, save this, okay? And because I teach about healthy sleep and dream work, you can put it under your pillow at night, and or the field will read it. And send you pictures, metaphorical pictures. So, really awesome. Thank you all for coming tonight. Let me ask you, because I'm standing here, how many can see an auric field? Can you see mine? Okay, David can see mine. You see any yellow light around? Okay. Angels, beings. Usually when we have a gathering like this, the place is packed with beings that are not embodied. Okay, so you all have a body, and I can see you're embodied in these very turbulent times of earth changes and social changes and so on. And so Becker takes his place in this, and because I didn't do a PowerPoint tonight, this is the bibliography I want you to have, okay? I want you to know that what's in here, if you just take just a quick minute to see what I saved for you. The body electric is about electromagnetism and the, hey, all right, now all is well. And the foundations for life, and we'll get into why Becker's written this book. I put the table of contents because it's a good outline of the whole field, okay? And then the next two pages are Becker saying that the art of healing, not only the science of healing, but the art of healing is very precious, okay? And I have a doctorate in counseling psychology, and I have a certification in spiritual direction, okay? So I've had a lifetime of understanding that how you think about being embodied is really important, okay? That you're housed in a body-mind system, but who you are is, and Einstein used the books here, so did Jung, so did Leibniz. Madame Blavatsky is a good starting point for how to get to Becker, okay? We have, in the Earth experience, this is like a spacesuit for Earth, okay? And E equals mc squared, so that means that energetically, we can't be created or destroyed. We don't know exactly where we came from before we were embodied in the Earth experience. And Becker is saying that the body can regenerate. Okay. Like you don't have to womb tube so much anymore, or eventually at all. Now, we don't know how to do that. All right, and if you would write on the top of your page, I want you to just write who I am becoming. Who I am becoming, I already am. Who I am becoming, I already am. Now, I put it in picture form. We're in potential as a species. There are thousands of species on the planet, And we are one of them that are in potential, but we haven't fully evolved to our full potential. You can picture that. Our roots have gone down into the earth, and our lower chakras explain that pretty well. And the heart center, if I were speaking as a Mayan, which there's a few Mayans in here. I know that we have a few past life regression Mayans in here. The Mayans thought that the whole earth was in the heart center of the living God. That's a nice image of the metaphor, okay? And the upper centers, and in the East we call them the chakras, and this is one of Leadbeater's books, okay? You can get them from the back here. And Leadbeater also wrote this book about visible and invisible. Just the little yellow books. Now, I'm going to leave these books out here because this is my way of introducing you to a bibliography of books. Small sample that predate Becker all the way back to Madame Blavatsky and Annie Besant, Ancient Wisdom, Leadbeater, and Becker was in medical school right at the end of World War II. I was still a little kid back in those days, so our lives overlapped to a certain extent. And he was in medical school, and at a time in New York at the Bellevue Hospital, we have Herman Kiefer here. You're talking knocked down, drag out, difficult people being in a hospital, all right? And in those days, one of the researchers, and I put it on, it's in here, he tells about it in the first couple of pages. He was doing a research project with a petri dish, and a mold killed his experiment. Okay, it's right in here. And penicillin was discovered. It killed the virus that was going on at the time, and he tells about it, so I put these 2 pages in. These are beautifully written by Becker about those experiences, okay? And on TV today, they're already publicizing pneumococcal pneumonia, right? I don't know if you watch the TV. They're selling it again. They're selling it again. And penicillin all but eliminated that pneumococcal pneumonia. He wrote about it just at the end of the Second World War. Now, he also stumbled into, and it's on the next page, I couldn't resist putting the picture in. Okay, there's lots of pictures in this book. But he found that if he could cut up little platyhelminths, these are little worms, single cell worms, okay? This picture is he just cut them this way, and 2 heads grew. At a certain point, he began to have a whole research team, and they used to grind them up in a meat grinder, and then they'd all multiply. And he's going, oh my God. He became fascinated with biological regeneration. Now, the next page shows you they went on to study not only the little worms, the platyhelminths, but he studied salamanders, because if they cut off an arm or a leg of a salamander, that grew on, the new leg and the new arm. So this is a picture of how they cut off the leg of the salamander and gradually how it grew, the new one. Not magic, it has something to do with our potential. Okay? We're heading for our potential, the regeneration of our body. Okay? And in the next page, we're going to start to talk about how the electricity, the energy that rolls through our bodies, it largely goes through our spine, through our nervous system, it goes through our bones, which we're going to talk about. That piece of the table is before Becker. Okay, then from energy medicine on, this is all we were at after Becker. Becker made a significant impact on where we're at today in holistic health, in energy medicine, in biofield medicine, understanding how the glandular system impacts on our regeneration, okay? And our bodies are regenerating. Usually we're not noticing it much, but every 7 years or so, a whole body is transforming, okay? So there's cellular memory, and there are things that are going on in the body that he documents in that table of contents. Okay, he ends up talking about the tree of life. So you need to look at the table of contents like an outline for this presentation. Now, I was a kid that had, I was caught in the polio epidemic. And as he was becoming a doctor in New York. And this is where we're at today. I have exceeded the polio statistics. I've exceeded the DNA of my parents. The research that I'm doing, because I'm researching in this field, and we built an energy medicine research institute. So I asked for a couple more decades of life. Okay. You have to understand that our spiritual being, however you think about it, is our energetic being. You can negotiate some more time if you have a good reason to stay on the planet. Take up space, air, water, food. And we're in these times where many people are leaving the planet. We want to not go there yet, okay? Statistically, we'll talk about that. But now we're on this picture here. I'm sure that you've all had pictures of the chakras, right? You know, red, green, white, the yellow, and those pictures are like talking to us like we're in kindergarten, because there are many more chakras. We are a beam of light that traverses through a physical body to have an earth experience. Okay, spacesuit earth. And maintaining it and understanding how it regenerates. The heart in so many lines, the lungs, your toenails, your hair. It's a process that is a pattern that is running your being, your physical being, and your spiritual being is awakening to more and more understanding as we are evolving in using more of our potential to become that which we are meant to be. We're kind of like seedlings yet. We're not fully potentiated yet. Can you understand that? Okay. Now, this is a simple picture of how the electricity flows through our body. We're like a battery, okay? The chakra, he's made it very, he's made it very simple in that through the chakras is like battery, like plus and minus. When you put batteries in your flashlight and light goes on, it's the same thing. We're light beings. And at the hands and at the feet are the negative connectors, and then through the chakras, he's putting it as positive. Now, different people explain it differently, but this is pretty simple to understand that you're like a battery, okay? And what we're coming to understand through a lot of Becker's work is that we are functioning at different watts or hertz, okay? Not everybody's the same brightness. And what we understand now is if you're functioning at too low a level of hertz, and there's a theorist, Leon Rohrbach, that's saying that we're functioning at 110, which is just AC electricity that you plug in. Then you can't come back to Earth. Okay, this is the first time in our history we're so used to thinking about reincarnating, right? Reincarnating. But what's happening is the Earth is adjusting in orbit. We knew for a long time that these were going to happen. This is going to happen. Earth changes. But really, as far as the Earth is concerned, it's just like adjusting, tuning up, like you would tune up a guitar, a violin, a piano, to stay in orbit. Okay. Now the Earth going through these adjustments, for the Earth it's just normal homeostatic properties. For us, you could fall into an earthquake, you could trip into a volcano. Lots of people are being washed away. We learned the new word tsunami recently, and the wildfires. This is the Earth adjusting, okay? And the Earth can hold 8 to 14 billion of us. It needs us to steward the Earth like a steering system. But we're already up to 8 billion going to 10 billion in 2050 by UN statistics. Okay. So what's the Earth doing? Thinning the herd, okay? Now, there's a human side to thinning the herd, and that is what Becker's trying to look at, is how phenomenal the folks that are going to continue to evolve and awaken to these higher vibrational levels of being, which are what I asked you to write on your paper. I am what I am becoming, I already am. See, fully potentiated is like a seed. It's all in you. And the pattern of who you are, your own individual pattern of being, can reproduce, okay? And what's happening as we're evolving now and awakening, if you aren't rising in these levels of hertz, 220, 240, at least 240, Bach rationalized the pianos back in his day in the Renaissance to 440A. I forgot to bring my tuning fork. If I blew my tuning fork, would you hum, like we do Om to 440A? Probably not tonight if we're tired. Okay, we have to tune ourselves up. And what Becker is showing us is, here is what the salamanders lay, the vibrational levels of the pattern of the lay. He went from platyhelminths to salamanders to frogs, regenerating body parts. Okay, 50 years of this. And he had a team of researchers in energy medicine. The NIH funded a lot of his research, and then they stopped funding it. Okay, that's why he wrote this book, because we were beginning to interfere, and I'm saying we, because I'm a researcher, we were beginning to interfere with conventional medical practices, okay? Big pharma, insurance companies, okay? All the leaders of the nations of the world, okay, including the World Health Organization. There are all these countries in past, before Blavatsky, before in back in the history, Egypt, and all these other countries. And today, we would plant diseases start some wars, and thin the herd. Just like if you were a gardener and you planted a whole lot of carrots, you had to thin the carrot patch, right? Now, at this stage, we're in a century, we're at the beginning of the 21st century, where this man is talking about the ability to regenerate your own body-mind system, okay? And I want to show you, let's get to it here. You got to read his language, because him explaining his research is so precious. Get to this picture about the finger. This is a human finger. And he had many, many human fingers in several decades of his research, that if they were severed, your finger was severed across the underneath the fingernail and before the first knuckle, severed. And it would regrow, including the fingernail, okay? Unless there was a tear, or unless the doctors tried to sew it back on. If you interfered with the natural pattern of regeneration, your body wouldn't do it. Interesting. This page is so significant that what he's saying here is that he saw this happening mostly in children. Mostly in children. Prepubescent children, and not teenagers. Once your body is starting to take on too much negativity of the mind, ingesting junk food, whatever else is going on in your body, forget it. You've interfered with the regeneration process. This picture, to me, when you read it, that's why I put it in here. Okay, I think I used 2 reams of paper already. And the treasurer of our board teases me that Johnson, he said, Mary uses ink like water. Okay, it's true. Okay, so I gave you a good run-in to understand about the finger, okay?
The finger, including the fingernail, regrows?
Yeah, the whole tip regrows. Pattern. Pattern, you gotta remember the word pattern, okay? Now, if you take the inference and you understand that we are evolving and awakening as a species, and we are individuating. There are no two of our species alike. Fingerprints, eye prints, voice prints. Each one of us is a pattern of what a human can be. A created pattern, an individualized pattern. David talks about the rays. That's another way of looking at the electricity, the rays that go through the body, the forms and patterns of each one of you. Each one of you is patterned. That's why you can reincarnate. Okay. The only reason you would reincarnate is that you wore the body out like you wear out a car, and you drop it, and there you are. See, and we've got used to thinking that's all there is. But Becker's going, no. This book is published in 1985, and he had already done about 40 years of research on this. Now, right after the finger, he's hypothesizing that the whole heart in our bodies, this is not a frog's heart, this is not a salamander's heart, this is a human heart, can be regenerated.
But you just said, once you throw into adulthood, it doesn't work anymore, it's just for children and.
Well, we're evolving.
Maturity.
Okay, yeah, good question. This is a really good question that you gotta think about.
He was before, like, the stem cells, because now they do that with stem cells.
Stem cells are part of the future of what Becker started to find out. We're gonna talk about stem cells later, but let me answer your question right now. Because the heart in our bodies has several properties. We were I think if you've ever written Rudolf Steiner, Anthroposophy, Rudolf Steiner understood that the heart was not simply a pump that pumped blood through your system. The heart has mental properties that are more extensive than the floppy disk on the top of your brainstem. And some of the pattern that we're talking, John. Some of the pattern that we're talking about has to do with harmonizing the heart. It has a vortexual motion. It's highly intuitive. This is a wonderful book by Henry Reed. And it also pops up the images in your mind's eye, and it also charges you, your pattern charges you electrically to go into action. Okay, so some of what we're talking about has to do with spirituality and health. We call it health, but health is not just the elimination of disease. Health is learning how to keep regenerating your body. This is amazing. To me, this is precious. And when Becker wrote this book, there was a person named James Oschman. Well, this book has gone around the world, there's no question about it. Okay, so James Oschman, and he has white hair these days. I guess I should pass this out. Kind of just take some and pass it away. Oschman studied this with a fine-tooth comb. Okay, he also studied Dora Coombs and Leadbeater and began to take what he's calling the scientific basis for energy medicine. Okay, this book, it comes after Body Electric, and Body Electric comes after Leadbeater and Madame Blavatsky. They flow through the 1800s into the 20th century, and now we're in the first couple of decades of the 21st century. We're in it. Okay. You see how that works? Okay. Now, should I ask for a pause if you need to have a question so far about what we're talking about? Yes.
So you say that this is the direction that humanity is headed towards regeneration.
It's one of the properties of the pattern of how we've been created. It's one of the properties of being, a human being having an earth experience.
You think we'll make clones? You think we'll make clones?
Clones?
So
We've
we
done
can
that already. We've done
transfer
that.
our minds into another body?
Those are all hypotheses that researchers are testing, okay? This is, yeah,
Oh, go ahead and finish answering his.
pardon?
I thought you were answering his real quick.
Yeah, I don't want to get too involved with any one aspect of this because I want you to understand why you have this paper in your hand. And like I said, if I could have bought each and every one of you a book I got you the best of the book, up to about 19, 20 pages. The last part of this is Becker's glossary. It's the definition of the words. And whoever you are and wherever you are in this piece of your lifetime, because you're embodied, okay? I'm asking you to really look at this in terms of your own body-mind system. Sometimes we have treated our bodies like they're rusty Chevrolets. And essentially, in potential, we're more like a Lamborghini. So, all right. Now, I'm gonna pass this out. Two things. Because there's a we to this, there's energy medicine. This is a whole book of research on resonance therapy, the magnetic effect. What Becker is saying, it isn't just chemistry, it isn't biochemistry. And Ashman is saying if doctors, medical students were taught some physics, okay, and some nutrition, we would be further along in this regeneration of our bodies. Okay, because there's a certain purity that you need to maintain to go to these higher levels of vibration. 448. You got, that's kind of where we're heading. And as a species, you're going to make it through these turbulent times if you can maintain these higher vibrational levels of thinking, breathing. Yoga is a big part of it. Meditation's a big part of it. Not eating junk of any sort. Food. We don't need food, really. We have enough, but the air isn't pure enough. The water's not pure enough. We have to get through these turbulent times. So I'll send this around to, we're having, in November, we're honoring two of the theorists, and you may know, one of them is Donna Eden. Have you heard of Donna Eden? She had MS when she was 16, and she used the energetic healing modalities, and she has been teaching all over the world how to use the body electric to heal, okay? She's beautiful, she dances, she's a research person. We have an energy medicine institute here in Michigan now. They started one in Ashland, Oregon, and we're going to be honoring her and her husband, David Feinstein, in November. They're coming in by Skype. Okay. Right now, they're touring to teach. They have a certification program that's just terrific. And then we also are honoring an artist that lives in Okemos who's been involved with esoteric healing practices. David is very much dedicated to esoteric studies. And lo and behold, coming full circle from Ledniger and Annie Besant and Evan Blavatsky, this is a brand new book published by Quest Publishing, that's Theosophical Society, and it's called The Healing Effects of Energy Medicine. And Ernie Siegel is the forehead, okay. The heart specialists, the people that have studied the heart, the cardiologists are on to something now. And I got an email today from Dr. Harsha Jayatolaki, who speaks here quite often. He is over there, this is the organization now, the Academy for Integrative Health and Medicine. And the blue paper that I've sent around is a subcategory of integrative medicine now, is called biofield medicine. And it goes all the way back to Ledbeater's, all the way back to Annie Besant, Rothenberg. Everything is coming full circle in terms of this place in our lives as a species to understand that we can regenerate. Okay. Now, what blocks us from doing that is fear, disbelief. We've been taught as children, nothing is as certain as death and taxes, right? Mantra, like a mantra, one generation after another. Okay? And at a certain point, I had books where I could teach zero taxes, okay? And at a certain point, I could do a healing where my hand would start to move the energy, and I'm going, oh, that was scary. That was really scary, because it was the first time I realized we do this, we can do this, we can do this. We're energy. So, this is another book. This is really, Dr. Oshman went on to write many more books. Becker did not. Becker did not. His funding came to an end. I met him when I was at U of M. Our paths crossed, and he was already probably late 70s, early 80s, and he had a giant, like this, crystal in his pocket. Okay. And he would drive around. He went on to invent other things after writing the book. Remember when the computers came in and we had a floppy disk and it had a coating on it? He invented the coating for the floppy disk. He's part of our generations in that sense. And he was driving because he knew his heart was at risk. And so every once in a while, he would put the crystal on his heart to calm himself down, to regenerate. He knew he was trying to live what he was teaching. You see? Very exciting to know him as a human. And again, to appreciate the book. Okay. Take a minute to look at the glossary. There's 2 or 3 pages of definitions. He established the field. When you create a theory, theories can never be proven. It can only be outgrown, disproven by better theories. Okay? And what Becker put out there as a theory is something that we are looking forward to as we evolve and awaken our full human potential. Now, some of the other species seem to be further along than us, okay? Dolphins and whales are 2 examples. We think we're the smartest and cleverest and most advanced species on the planet, but we've been kind of lazy butts, especially toward the end of the 20th century, when it got pretty rugged in terms of societal differences. Okay. And we're in it right now. Let's think of it this way. We're not going to go into the turbulence. We're almost through it. Hope springs eternal. Okay, depends on where you're at. But the last part of the 20th century was a woodcracker. And it's been, and Leadbeater explains it very nicely in terms of cycles, going from light into dark and so on. And you have to kind of spread out a little bit and think of yourself as a more universal being, to be thinking of yourself as an energetic being. The personality that you know yourself to be is not who you are. Okay, the personality is just like the name of the car you're driving on, around in. It's not the be-all, end-all. The personality, and most scientists are only studying personality levels. You know, are you what kind of car are you driving around in? You have to project your consciousness to a level of understanding that you are inside this vehicle, and you gotta take care of it. Or if you don't, you just drop it, you know, but not at less than 110 hertz. As you'll have to reincarnate somewhere else. I use the example of Schwarzenegger's Terminator, just to scare you a bit, okay? It'd be better to meditate, to do the yoga, to eat better, breathe better, do everything to get yourself up to 440A, than drop the body at 110 and 440. Electricity, that's electricity. I'm talking about hertz, voltage. So, this one is about energy medicine and therapeutics and human performance.
So I was wondering if you could help me understand like a surface level first pass of the relationship between the various healing modalities and the energetic body, the energetic vehicle of the human. And like, you know, roughly speaking, is there a way that it makes sense to categorize the mechanism involved with things like Reiki?
Yeah, again, I graduated from the theoretical and behavioral sciences, okay? So I'm going to answer your question in terms of a theory, okay? Each one of us is a theory of what being is, okay? Not only in a body, but out in and out of a body, okay? So you have to determine theoretically what you think you are energetically, first of all, and then ask yourself why you came into the earth experience, because it's kind of a primitive experience. And it's sort of a proving ground to see if, every once in a while you have an earth experience to see if you understand natural laws and you understand universal laws. Okay, and there are folks, it's in Annie Besant, page 208, 209, there are folks that have graduated from the earth experience and they've agreed, like alumni, to re-embody in order to be of service to humanity. So you've got to ask yourself that question. Reiki is a Japanese word for energetic energy going from one person to another, like water seeking its own level. Okay, if I'm vibrating at a higher level than you are, and I'm willing to send through my energy system energy that you can have, okay, then it will raise your vibrational level. Now, that's a simple way of understanding this kind of energy, okay? I'm going to give you an example from what I'm doing now. It's a simple example, but how can I get you? At a certain point, you connect, and I say it's in your heart center. There's a direct contact with that universal energy, whether you call it God, whether you call it creative forces, the great mystery, I don't care what you call it, but you can have direct contact and be guided from within so that you're on a path of purpose, a path that makes your lifetime as purposeful as it can be. Okay, now with theories, they only work because we're limited as human beings. You have to have a set of assumptions that make the theory make sense. So any theory, including Becker, we can outgrow it, but if we're studying the theories of the great theorists like Einstein and like Jung and so on, Leibniz, who studied these books, we can advance on the basis of what they were guided to understand. So we interact with each other. We're never not connected with each other. We're one. You know the song, one? Okay, at the same time, we're individuating as part of this evolving and awakening. And there's a place inside that you cannot be violated. I've got students here tonight, and they know, we talk about remote viewing, and we talk about astral traveling, and we talk about going out into the dream time. Park the body, go out into the dream time, like recess from Earth being like an Earth school. At the same time, that part of you cannot be violated, okay? I can do remote viewing as long as I'm doing it essentially with your permission, but that place inside of you cannot be violated, and that's that connection to the source. Now, you might be a light bulb that's functioning at 20 watts, okay? You might be a 60-watt bulb, or you might be a 100-watt bulb. But once you start connecting consciously, your light is brighter inside of, you can be experienced as a brighter light. Let's put it that way. Your energy shines brighter. And so with Reiki, I was allowed on Sundays now. I put a project in St. Joe's Mercy Oakland Hospital up at Pontiac, right on the border of Pontiac. And I'm living all this stuff. I know what it feels like. And I know that I've had the healing experiences that have gotten me to this point, okay? So they let us into the hospital through what they call a spiritual care department. And we put in a group process for about a year. And then after a while, they said, well, could you just come in on Sundays and do some healing with the patients in the hospital? And we have a brand new wing with 2nd through 7th floor in the South Tower. And they gave me a printout. I have a badge. I knew a year in advance through the dream work that I would have a badge. Didn't know how it was going to come, but one day I had a badge, okay? It was to get me in the doors with a little clicker on the badge. And when Randall's talking about Reiki, because this is a spiritual hospital, they allow prayer, okay? And lo and behold, I don't call it Reiki, okay? You have to use the language of the environment that you're in. However, the Lord's Prayer, I have a chart. It raises it balances the chakras, opens them, balances them, the chakras, raises your immune system as a result of that. And they give me a computerized printout of all the people that want prayer every Sunday. Okay, so I'm going, what a privilege. At a certain point, if you commit to this work, Spirit just tells you where to go, what to do, when to do it, like that. See? And on the one hand, it's very mystical, and on the other hand, it's very practical, electricity. And you can see, if you see the people in the beds, they all have air, they all have needles, they're all on machines, you know. Most of them are at some sort of death's door event. And on Sundays, the families come, okay? So we just get around the bed, and the person that's in the bed, and then stand and hold hands and do the Lord's Prayer, and you can watch that whole energy raising. You can see the colors, you can see the energy, the breathing, the depth of breathing, and the person is recommitting to being live. Okay? Right there. And I don't say anything, I just say, sometimes I will say, and the nurses come and the doctors come with us. It's just wonderful. I'll just say, well, we are such slow developing species that it took us 2,000 years. We were given this prayer 2,000 years ago, and we're just getting the hang of it in terms of healing. We call it healing. He's calling it regeneration. Just different words.
So have these people ever been healed? Did you agree with?
You gotta understand that we have patterns. Remember the word patterns? We come to Earth on purpose. And in this time, not everybody that wants a body gets a body. Because if you're in a body, and I'm talking to everybody that's in a body, you're not a saint, but you are courageous, you're resilient, you're innovative. You can, if one roadblock occurs, you can figure out some other ways to get things done. There are qualities in our species right now that have allowed you to be embodied, because a good, if we're going from 8 to 10 billion humans, through all this turbulence, there might be at least 1.3, I did it on 20% of the number, billions that will make it to the other side of this turbulence. Okay? So our job is to facilitate, okay?
So the body might not be healed, but somehow the spirit is
You
healed?
gotta understand, we are healed, okay? We get imbalanced. We get imbalanced. We can get out of balance, like a guitar, okay? A guitar is a good example. The guitar isn't healed or not healed. It's just tuned up. So it's playing more harmoniously. You see? And we're living much longer as a species than ever. In some cultures, we died when we were old, in our 30s and 40s. Ancient books say we lived 1,000 years. Okay, we don't know, but we do know that we are here now, embodied during these times, and the electricity has been enhanced by what we're calling the information age. We've begun to understand what we can do with electricity. It wasn't just, lightning and Ben Franklin and kites and stuff. We're understanding ourselves by understanding electricity in a variety of ways, and the internet is bringing us closer together quicker. So things like lying, stealing, cheating, being afraid, being doubting, and all of those things that deteriorate your body, you can stop it quicker. YouTube especially, there's some nice meditative things on YouTube. Yeah.
Hi, yes, the intellect controls the mind and the mind controls the body, and the research with the plasticity of the mind, where it can it's flexible to deal with trauma and then the same thing with the body. If there's trauma to the body, whether it be in sports or other things, there's blockages of the energy, and again, going back to the mind, how flexible it can be, and that has a big impact on the healing of the body.
Absolutely. Memory. That's what meditation is really good for, is to still the mind.
Right.
Okay, memory.
Exactly.
We're mostly memories. We're mostly stored memories.
Really? Okay.
Good old Akashic records, okay? And part of the patterns that each of us have contain past life unfinished business, let's put it that way. And we also bring in gifts of the spirit, okay? I learned that spirit is the life. E equals MC squared. Spirit is the life, mind is the builder, physical is the result. If you are rattling on and you've habituated to negativity, you're gonna have pain, accidents,
Right.
trauma. You use the word trauma, I'm going, oh my goodness. If you're moving to higher vibrational levels of being, you're not in that energy plane
Right.
where all this trauma is happening. You want to continue to, as you're evolving, you want to awaken. Okay, now, one of the best examples of this research right now for me is the word autism. Okay, our society is so habituated to disease, naming diseases. Try not to name a disease in your body. My heart attack, my diabetes, my cancer, me, okay? Don't do that to yourself. The concept of whole person health is what's emerging. All right, and autism, I was taught not to argue with the scientists, not to argue with the theorists, because I wouldn't have anybody to invoice, okay? Okay. But to come up with a new option, all right? And what we're watching in this mindset, especially in autism, is we're watching the bodies evolving, okay? The whole physicality of the human body is transforming. How we receive information, how we do digestion. We don't need food. We don't need food. We can live on the air. We can live on a little bit of water, but we don't know that. It's the same thing as nothing is as certain as death and taxes. Death is not certain. It's just a word. And how you teach yourself to think about it is what really is what's important, okay? Now chances are, like the children in this book where their fingers regrew, and there's humans in other parts of it, in other cultures that are doing this, but our culture denies the reality of this. Because we have created a death economy. Statistically, you're supposed to get your diseases and die on time. And even Dean Orish is speaking. He's a cardiologist at the conference this weekend in San Diego. He has done research after Becker kind of research on the heart, where he's saying the word chronic needs to be canceled.
Right.
Cancel, cancel, cancel.
Right.
We've been sold a bill of goods. And he can reverse heart disease in 72 days. You have to go for training, you have to buy his books, but by golly, this is from 1985, 95, 2005, 15. 2 decades into the new age. Yeah.
Back to what you said about autism, very interesting, very, very interesting. You said that as a human species, we're evolving, because we're all one and we're all connecting. If you notice, the autism rates are like booming more in children, so is this the ripple effect of what we're consuming with our minds,
If you
the air, our
don't-
thoughts is coming out through our children?
If you don't think of it as
deformities?
a dysfunction, okay, parents are still being taught that it's a dysfunction. If you see it with a different perception as a sample of an evolutionary branching of the whole physicality of the body, mind, spirit that we're living in to do Earth, then you're going to understand what Annie Besant's saying about master beings coming back into bodies to finish off this age.
But what you said makes total sense. That totally makes sense. Then it just being vaccines
Thank you.
related or something.
Thank
That makes
you.
total sense.
I
That
appreciate that. It is. It's
like we're
simple
punishing our own
sense.
children, we don't
Yeah,
realize
and
it.
we're living inside of bodies that contest what I'm saying, right? You're experiencing we're mostly water, for one thing, with these sloggy bodies, you know? And Clarissa Piccola Estes says, you gotta pick up the bones every day. Every day. If you don't pick up your own bones, you're gonna be on the escalator out the door. And we've invented a hospice now where you can be legally offed. It's very exciting times to be alive. And the more you impact on each other and share, even just your family and friends, get a few humans across this time. There's the whole planet. We don't know how many so-called Americans are going to make it across this time. We don't even know if the word American as an experiment, can a human being govern themselves ethically and morally without an external dictator kind of
So
person.
another
Yeah.
point, I guess, with the autism rates, because to me they're way more than what they say they are. I see it all the time. I feel like a quarter of my friends have autistic kids, but it's kind of like, if I'm saying the word right, it's
You have to understand,
the collective consciousness is kind of what we're putting up, or is that the conscious?
a lot of the pain,
What we're putting out in the
a lot
universe
of
is
the
coming back.
pain that we're feeling in our bodies is that our bodies are transforming and we're resisting the transformation.
We keep a lot of people
We think
alive.
it's pain. Okay. Yeah, that's why I'm presenting this, okay, that we're not only evolving and the pictures of what we don't look like Neanderthal. Remember the pictures? This is how we look today, but we're gonna look differently. We're evolving and awakening in consciousness. We are like a seed, like an acorn. That's why I asked you to write that. Who I am becoming is who I am. So there's only one you, and there's only one John, and there's one, you see what I'm saying? And we impact on each other. Now, we're wrestling with the words, that's why I asked you to look at the glossary, okay? Because we use words like God is love, okay? Well, for heaven's sakes, you can love at any vibrational level of love, okay? But once you get to the 440A, and it's a little bit above or a little bit below, it's actually how they tune up the orchestras, the symphony orchestras with the oboes these days. Then you can go to higher vibrational levels, and you can go down to lower vibrational levels, because this is your little pad, 438.
You say the 110 hertz, you want to be above that. Can that be measured scientifically?
Yes, hertz with a voltmeter, hertz.
So where do you put?
H-E-R-T, you get
Well,
this
do you put it
one.
in your ear or what? I mean, not to make a joke, but
No, it's not a joke,
Yeah, I
it's not a
mean,
joke.
can it, and.
I'm gonna see if I can,
I mean, I can tell
you're
by the
making me
vibrance
very
of
happy today.
I can tell by the vibrance of a person.
I'm gonna show, no. Because of the computer, okay, now.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Randy's saying Reiki, we are the instruments that can heal others, where two or more are
Right,
gathered. Okay,
absolutely.
but now, let's see where the picture is, they've got one on here. You know those suction cups they put
Oh,
in?
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
you can buy a little tiny gizmo, there's a picture of it in here, and they've attached
Wow.
it to this guy on a Reiki bed, above and below the heart, okay? The one gizmo is like just a little tiny thing like this,
Mhm.
and you dial it into the hertz levels
Right,
of the organ of your body
Mm.
that needs healing.
Wow.
Okay, all right, now who is doing this is physical therapists have these gizmos, okay? There's one up in Rochester Hills in the Barclay Circle. Her name is Vanessa Howe. She was very savvy, not about creating a really accurate one of these gizmos. Okay, now, like anything else, you can buy cheap ones, or, you know, it's like not gonna work.
Right.
But hers are working to the level that she's being paid good gobs of money to be flown out to NFL football players to speed up the healing in their broken bones and their
Mhm,
torn muscles and so on.
Right.
It can, we're on it now, see, we're on it now. And I'm on a research grant writing team at Oakland U, for example. And we're writing a grant through the NIH to have resonance therapy, that's what they call this, resonance therapy, and virtual reality, okay? And then I'm adding nutrition. I'm a diagonal, you got eat, breathe, do yoga, meditation, yoga, and integrative medicine, and these technological, integrative medicine technologies is what they're calling it now.
You'll probably have an app on your iPhone someday.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
I know,
Well,
that's
they
what
do, absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. You can't stop the information age, and back to Ledbetter and Blavatsky, the auric field reads.
Yeah.
The auric field reads. It's not just pretty, okay? You can put something through your auric field and it will read. That's what dream work is. Essentially, you're laying your whole auric field on a bed. The autonomic nervous system regenerates your vehicle, the body, and out you go.
Wouldn't it be like that biofeedback?
Yeah,
things,
yeah, that's what that is.
meters that take-
Biofeedback. But they've added the word medicine to it now.
Oh.
And just last year, on that page I gave you with the blue, with the 4 speakers, just last year. It's exciting. Yeah.
I have a question. So I didn't understand exactly when you asked, like, so you can see color around,
Yeah.
like, how do you see that? I don't see any colors
Oh,
anywhere.
well, we all have different gifts of the spirit, let's put it that way.
Okay.
Some people can feel the energy.
Okay.
Okay, some people can see the colors. Some people sense them in different ways. But once you go for training,
Mhm.
okay, suppose you want to learn to play a guitar
Yes,
and you don't know how to play a guitar.
yes.
Okay, so you go get guitar lessons. Then the first thing, you start seeing a little yellow around the person. And the more you practice, and the more you look at the chakras, and the more you feel the energy, the more the colors start to come up. This is what it looks like, a body inside here.
I see.
Yeah.
So when you say
And
that,
you can tell where the diseases are just imbalances, okay? If we were at one with God consciousness, this whole aura field would be light.
I see.
But we have the chakras and we see in color because the light bends through the air of the Earth's atmosphere. Okay, and why we're doing Earth is a choice. We come and go from Earth, but the body is the vehicle for being in the Earth, for doing Earth. Okay.
Now I have another question.
Mhm.
So you say that you go to the hospital and pray and you see the colors changing.
Yeah, this is what it looks like.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so what you're saying is there's some sort of healings happening. So you can almost see them, the sick
Now,
bodies.
The word healing
Okay.
means rebalancing the whole energy system. It's like taking your car for maintenance. Oil change, get some new gas,
Mhm.
fix the lights and so on. And the body has that property. The way we've been created, there's about 10, 12 different systems that interact. And the glands generate the hormones and so on. But the mental health part of it is there are issues that we have come to Earth to work on. It's a school.
I see.
It's just one place in eternity. And the young ones are starting to realize that the universe is bound, like a balloon. They're starting to understand that we're creating many universes.
Okay, so, now, when you look at me, can you see my colors?
If I want to. You have to turn them on and off, okay?
I see,
Yeah.
okay.
Now, for me today, because I'm in a really happy place, okay?
Yes.
It's like a whole big golden yellow presence here. We're
Okay.
kind of at one-ment today,
Okay.
If I'm riding the buses, okay, I will take Heart Center and just fill up the bus with pink light. That's a really good healing energy. If you fill up the bus with white light, you can make people pass out. Sometimes white light is too strong. It's like your eyes looking into a light bulb. See? Yellow is the lower solar plexus that moves you into action.
I see.
Okay. And eventually these higher centers, the glands that go up here, have to be harmonized with the lower centers so that you are whole person. Your health is a whole person health. That's why people that say, oh, I don't need much sleep, you have to recycle the body. And think of it as going out for recess. The body's being recycled because of the autonomic nervous system. And you, the energy, the soul, the energy, you usually have to promise to come back. You can't leave your body unmanaged. Our society is very cruel to people who leave their bodies unmanaged. Mental hospitals and so on. Yeah. And another thing is you think of things as you adopt a consciousness of things are always in divine order. Okay, if you're out of balance and something hurts, then you gotta fix it. It's your responsibility to fix it. Okay, you can do it by sending energy through. You can go to a conventional doctor and they'll cut you open and give you all kind of pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't cut your bodies. Try not to cut your bodies.
So what you're saying then, what we should do if we don't know that?
That's what holistic health is all about. Whole person health, energy. That's what it is. Yeah, because it's healing. Oh my goodness, we need a healing test. David. Come to this, yeah.
Okay.
And we have classes.
Okay.
We have classes, and all of us, the way the nervous system is bundled, the neurons come into our hands, into our feet, into our palm. Okay, and we can send that energy into another person. Now, you don't get a fancy idea that you are the healer. You're an instrument of the energy going through you, and the other person's body will take it where it needs it. Because the pattern that is you and your purpose in coming to the earth, the lessons you've got to learn, the unfinished business with people that are on your path, all of those things, the use of your spiritual gifts make you individual. You should come to class.
Yeah, I like to.
Okay.
I love to, yes.
Could you speak to the terminology that people use is placebo effect and the efficacy of these kinds of things on a person who really thinks that it will work versus those who wouldn't?
Well, you know what the placebo effect that Rand was talking about? Back in the days, there are forms of research that are deceptive. Let's put it that way. We're so gullible. We're so gullible. That's why I encourage you to awaken. Okay? The higher vibrational levels of awakening make you less gullible. Okay, so the placebo effect is, in the research annals, are people that gave one set of subjects a pill and another a sugar pill. okay? And the research shows that if you have an affection, a love, respect, a belief for the authority figure that's doing the research, okay? That's why doctors wear white coats and stethoscopes and all that stuff. Then you will buy into what they're selling, okay? And if they tell you it's a high-powered medicine, pharmaceutical medicine that will heal your heart or fix your lungs or whatever, the statistics show that there will be a change in your body. Okay, placebo effect means you've been fooled because we're gullible. That's how I explain it. Okay. The dishonesty in the conventional medical system has caused a brokenness that is giving way to what we're calling the physics of medicine. And if the doctors had been learning a little physics along with the chemistry and surgery, then we would be further along. You see how that is?
To piggyback what Randy's question showed, would Reiki only work if the person who is the receiver is believing that it's healing
Yeah,
them?
you can block the energy. Let's say it's 50-50, okay? No matter how much I'm dedicated to offering an hour of my lifetime to your healing, to give you Reiki, I don't get the lifetime back, but you don't have to take it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are hell-bent on getting off the planet. They can't wait to get off the planet. You see, that's why this less than 110, 10 or less than 110 is starting to be a part of our consciousness now. We're evolving and awakening. And Deanne Rohrbach says you get a probationary period if you can crank yourself up to 220, okay? And I said, don't waste your time. Don't waste your time. Some people call it the fourth dimension. Okay, go to 5. That's a good little head for now.
So the 110 you're saying is versus a negative soul, somebody who's like an alcoholic, hates the world, miserable around the clock. To me, that's a lower frequency, but you're saying it's more of people that want to get off this planet fast.
Yeah.
Like those would be like old souls that feel like I've been here, I've done this. This is the safe places on the other side.
Yeah. In metaphysics and spiritual language, it's simple: selfless or selfish. The more selfish you are, the lower vibrational level you're going to go to. And the TV now, the new programs are terrific. They show you how to kill yourself. They have a program called Evil now. Week after. See, that's all going into our nervous systems if you sit there. Okay, so you have to change the channel, pull a plug or something. You know? Yeah, to go. You have to make these choices and be responsible for your own energy system.
And you said at about 110 or less, you will not have the ability to continue to reincarnate? Because isn't that the goal of some people to not come back here anymore?
Going up to the Earth is tuning up to stay in orbit. We lowered the vibrational level of the mother. The mother is tired of us as a species.
I thought all of the other planets were.
I'm using metaphorical language to have you visualize it, because the more you can visualize it in your own life, the better. It's not a head trip. Although the head, if you're understand that the whole earth is in the heart chakra of the living God as a concept, then this is where the heart, I showed you that intuitive heart book, the heart has an intelligence all its own. Okay, it's amazing. It's not just a pump. And where you draw in what we're simply, like in kindergarten, calling love energy, your emotions are directed toward higher vibrational levels of being. And that's what we would call healing. Then pictures pop up in your mind's eye in terms of what to do. and then they drop down into your solar plexus to move you into action. It doesn't work unless you go into action. See?
Yeah, a couple of interesting things to think about is the proposition of, in esoteric anatomy, is that the soul, you brought it up a number of times tonight about the emphasis of the heart. And in the study of esoteric anatomy, it is said and taught that the soul is seated in the sinus node of the heart. Not in the head, but in the heart.
That's why I put that page in, and Becker's saying, take care of your heart, okay? It's more precious than you imagine, it's not just a pump. Okay? And it sends your guidance up into your senses, and that's why dreaming, we can't do Earth without sleeping and dreaming. The dream research would waken people with REM sleep. In 4 days, you would have a major dream. But our society calls it a hallucination. Okay, you can't do Earth without sleeping and dreaming. And the dreaming is a direct conversation, a dialogue between you as that individual and that which created you, however you think about it. It's amazing, it's just amazing, yeah. And all the cultures know this stuff. There's not a culture on the planet that doesn't know this stuff. And as far as re-embodying as an alumni from the Earth experience, we're up to 3 generations of what we would call master beings. Right? They're already grandparents, children, and grandchildren in the Earth to finish off this age. See, we're going from Piscean into Aquarian, but it doesn't just click like that, it overlaps. The ages overlap. And so the ones that are coming down are disintegrating, and you could call it extincting. Versions of humanity are extincting, and other versions of humanity are evolving and awakening. That's another way of thinking about it. So you ask yourself, who am I? That's why I asked you to write that. I am becoming what I am.
Yes, you had the diagram of the 2 hands, and I heard you made example of the body being a battery, and then the extremities negative, the legs or the feet negative. And from little knowledge I have, the energy from the chakras come through the crown, okay, and
it flows. There's a flow of
oh
energy
yeah,
that makes the auric field.
So
The different layers.
right, and so you get grounded, as they saying in the martial arts and a lot of other things. You get grounded to the earth, and you're, and then the hands, if the energy's coming out through the hands, and
They come through the feet too.
oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can do Reiki with your feet on someone's back. You can walk on the person, wherever the bundles come out.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And I don't have a picture of it today, because I'm trying to stay in a believable space, okay? What you're asking, and you've been asking. The fingers are each, because we're more complex than a salamander, okay? Each finger is like a person, okay? And I think that's why if you chop off the fingertip, it grows back in like a head. Because if it were down further, so essentially the energy that's coming out of your fingertips into the other person is like a crown chakra per fingertip, sending,
Oh, I see.
you see what
I
I'm
see.
saying?
Yeah,
The more you understand yourself as a vehicle of energy pouring through you, the more you get interested in sharing that energy.
and the arthritis in the hands or the feet, which is pretty common.
Arthritis is a,
Well, wait, I didn't mean to bring it up, but
telling you,
isn't that a?
we have been sold a bill of goods that nothing is as certain as death. And taxes, okay.
So,
And
so-
there's 100 or more different forms of arthritis we have been
Right.
talked into having. Nonsense.
And that's electrical, the arthritis, not
They're
blood.
blocks, the energy's blocked because we bought into it. We thought that at a certain decade of our life, we're supposed to look like this and we're supposed to
Right,
have
I
these
get it,
diseases. And they're irreversible.
Right, right, right.
They're chronic. Cancel. There's so many things that are stored in our nervous system
Right,
as beliefs. See, things that we've been taught, we're outgrowing. Theories of being, we're outgrowing them.
right.
And
Here's a-
Becker led the way.
Here's a simple one, memory loss. What about, is that something easily curable with everything else?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. Look, Dean Ornish has been working on this like Becker, but he's later on. Becker's the thing we're talking about today. But Dean Ornish is an MD who's a cardiologist, and he's been at this through all these years of getting research money from the funding sources. And he is on YouTube, and Oprah's interviewing him. Okay, he's saying it's coming out of his mouth. Dial up Dean Ornish, and he's got a book out called Undo It. You know, like Nike says, do it. He's saying undo it. And when you look at his website, because all of his work has been on cardiology, the heart is so important in the body. It's more important than the floppy disk. Okay? Our whole brain system is this little pudgy thing on the top of our brain that's mostly fat molecules, but the neurons go all through your body, my system. So what he's saying is, and he says it on his website, he uses the word cure, okay? Whoa, that's daring.
Yeah, FDA.
And FDA approves his methodology. He's saying it can be cured, reversed. Heart cardiology events in 72 days. It's on his website. Buy the book, get the video. And
What's his
he's
name?
training research teams to duplicate it.
For
He's
memory
the
loss?
only one that FDA approves, and he's the only one that Medicare pays for in this day and age. Now, if you go to the doctor, a conventional doctor, I live this stuff. I'm very dedicated to this, okay? To undoing some of the nonsense we've been taught. You gotta get it out of your nervous system. It's like stopping smoking, learning how to give up alcohol. You have to detox from some of these ideas that are not true. They're just not true. We're in a house of truth here. The reversal of what he's set up in motion is the first one the Food and Drug Administration has agreed to. Okay? The first one that is paid by Medicare. And why? Because heart disease has peaked as the #1 disease. Okay? Now, we have always, I don't know if you had history stories, where we used to plant measles, we used to plant on blankets, we used to plant plant HIV/AIDS, okay, to lower the number of people in a culture. We also have learned to create war machines and sell them and get people arguing so they kill each other off. We're very good at the death economy because we believe that there's nothing as certain as death. But there is some things that are less certain. Yeah, you have to really, it's a detoxing and a new learning, yeah.
So that doctor you mentioned, he would cover all topics besides the heart disease?
When
For the
he's
most part, as
talking-
far as reversing
When he's
illness?
talking on Oprah's, you know how she does that Sunday, and it's on YouTube. It's on YouTube.
Super Soul Sunday.
He's saying, because he started with cardiology, he's a cardiologist, MD, Dean Ornish.
Dave Horner?
Then, huh?
Dave Horner?
Dean.
Oh, Dean.
Dean. Yeah.
Cornish or
Dean-
Cornish?
Ornish, Ornish, like Cornish hen. He's saying that he can see with what he's learned so far that the future could reverse all forms of chronic disease.
Right on.
See, he's projecting from what he's experiencing through his life dedicated to this research.
So regarding that, can you speak on the Alexander technique and how it might be related?
You know Alexander?
A little bit.
Alexander technique? How can I say this? That's in a category of working with the structural system, the muscles and the bones and so on, you have to study it, okay? But this is easier.
Well, but I just mean that it's related and that it's an undoing. I mean, the first step of doing
Yes,
anything in
it's
Alexander
undoing.
technique is undoing what you're doing
Yeah.
isn't serving you.
Well, in fact, that's how I'm alive, by having had the polio, okay? I was caught in the polio epidemic in Detroit when I was 9.5 months old. My mother took me to Hudson's to get a baby picture. So I'm a healthy baby, then I get in the polio, and the polio epidemic happened, synchronicity has something to do with this. At the same time, about 20 years before that moment, as a woman is a nurse in Australia, okay, and she's studying how the muscles atrophy from the polio virus. But she's a nurse, okay. Sister Kenny is her name. And the doctors, she tried to tell the doctors, you're looking at it the wrong way. You're looking at the muscles pulling this way, and I'm looking at them pulling that way. You have to get into it, really study what she did. They made her look like an idiot. They wouldn't accept her theory. They ridiculed her, they published against her. The doctors had power, MDs, and they were right and she was wrong, period. So she moved to England to try and reach the doctors in England. They did the same thing to her, okay? So then she comes, as she's aging, she comes to America and comes right into Chicago and Detroit where this polio epidemic is. And fortunately for this little baby, my parents were taught by Sister Kenny. See? And they did hot packs and swimming, a lot of prayer, a lot of exercises on the kitchen table. And here I am, okay? I was never in an iron lung. I've exceeded the polio statistics that are worldwide. There's a worldwide polio network. I live this stuff.
So wait,
God had other plans for you,
Huh?
obviously.
Pardon?
God had other plans for you, obviously. He's standing here right
That's
now
what
teaching
that's,
us.
that's, yeah.
so are you
That's-
saying,
I think I'm doing, now, day by day, I do the dream work and I do the journaling and I say, thank God for the morning, you know, I'm here, use me, send me. And you just work inside the day, just work inside the day. And if the guidance doesn't make sense to you, you just say, could you please clarify? Go back into the sleep state. And your recycle, in the morning, you've got a whole recycled body-mind system to receive the guidance better. Because we go out of tune. That's what siestas are. We go out of tune around 4 o'clock. Remember the biorhythms?
okay, so you're saying in your personal story that Alexander technique has been essential, but that what you're talking to us about today is much simpler since it's innate.
It's more comprehensive. Yeah, it's because we're talking about honoring Becker today. Okay, not the Alexandra technique.
Right.
Yeah. And because on that green flyer, we're honoring David Feinstein, who wrote this paper. There's 12 pages, I just gave you the cover. 6 pillars of energy medicine, clinical strengths of a complementary paradigm. Paradigm's another word for a theory. Okay. And God bless him, I don't have my glasses. Can you read what it says? He's honoring Becker. And he's honoring Norm Shealy, who is one of our mentors. Norm is in his late 80s now. Dr. Gladys is pushing 100. Okay, I didn't bring that flight. But they founded the field of holistic health, and then they moved it into this integrated medicine. Can somebody read what it says?
We don't have that one.
There you go.
Read, starting here.
Yeah, read the little thing that says Becker. We're honoring Becker tonight.
Okay, it says, we are now in the process of revising the past century's biochemical concept, under which all major life processes are chemical in nature, to one that proposes that such processes are electromagnetic in nature.
For honoring Becker, for his contribution to understanding the nature of how we've been created. Well, to read the next one up, because Norm Shealy, our organization is becoming an affiliate of something called the International Society for the Study of Subtle Energy, which is the ORC field, and energy medicine. And David's honoring Norm, and we're honoring David and Donna Eden, their husband and wife, on that green flyer.
So, let me get clear here. Do you want me to start reading from the top?
No, just a little thing about Norm.
Little thing about Norm. So I've got David Feinstein.
Or Sheila.
Second paragraph?
Yeah, that little, David
Oh.
Feinstein. Yeah, read that little thing about David.
Okay, so it says David Feinstein, PhD, is a clinical psychologist and the national director of the Energy Medicine Institute, based in Ashland, Oregon. Donna Eden, an energy medicine practitioner and instructor, is president of the Energy Medicine Institute.
Okay, and you've got the green flyer. Those two are who we're honoring as scientists in energy medicine. And then we're also honoring an artist, Dr. Alexandra Summit. That she's an artist is true. She's a commissioned artist. At the same time, she does esoteric healing. That'd be her.
Does hypnosis fit in here
Yep.
anywhere?
Yep.
How does that relate to?
Oh. Hypnosis is a form of shifting consciousness. Okay. And you can block it. It's you have
Some
to.
people don't accept it. So
Right.
as long as you don't believe in it, then it's not gonna work.
Yeah. Now I'm going to tell you that you're wasting your time to not believe in it. You're blocking a very valuable healing tool to block. And a lot of people just don't want to know. We can live and die, and that's okay. It's a no-fault system.
To backtrack just a little bit, we say in esoteric healing that there are 20 maxims.
Okay.
I've printed them and passed them out here before, and the talk we gave around Christmas time for our group, the Energy Medicine Research Institute. It's interesting to note that the 20 maxims, that the first maxim, or rule for healing, is energy follows thought. We did discuss earlier the idea of the placebo effect, and that would include the first maxim of esoteric healing. Blavatsky also, in her writings, says that about 80% of disease is astral, which means emotional. some nowadays think that it may even be higher than 80%, but in her lifetime, she said 80%. She also said, and I remember discussing it here in one of my lectures, that that disease, Blavatsky said, is God's merciful remedy for the spiritually sick.
Say
that
again? No,
The disease is God's merciful remedy for the spiritually sick. One of the great psychotherapists of the 20th century was Roberto Assagioli. He was a student of Alice Bailey's. And he called it, he called it psychosynthesis. And what psychosynthesis is where you are no longer living as a personality in the world, but you're living as a soul.
Wow.
And it's the blending of the higher self, which is the soul, which is what you made us really write on our
Yeah, he
paper.
calls it, super conscious.
Who am I becoming? I already am.
Yes.
You're a soul.
Yeah.
You're a soul. And if you think of yourself as a soul, then you're an immortal being. And you will reincarnate over a period of 1,000,000 years through 1,000 incarnations to a degree of perfection, which we call the process of initiation, which is the deep secret of the initiatory process, is found in the story of the life of Jesus. And the 5 important events in the life of Jesus was the birth, the baptism, the transfiguration, the crucifixion, and the resurrection. It's worth thinking about.
David, I have a question for you. What's the other 20% of what the illness comes from if it's not emotional?
Well, it's things like, it's a good question.
Environmental.
Because disease is real in the mundane sense. Smallpox, things like that are undeniable. I'm in the process of putting a lecture together on the origin of AIDS and how AIDS came about through the mass inoculation process through the World Health Organization to eliminate smallpox. In the process of doing that, they took cattle in Africa. We don't think of Africa as being a place that raises cattle, but they've got more cattle in Africa than any place in the world. It's a status of wealth, a sign of wealth to have cattle. In Central Africa, the World Health Organization went down into Central Africa to inoculate against smallpox. And in order to do that, they had to produce the serum. And the serum, the smallpox was given to cattle who were suffering from bovine leukemia virus. And that the mixture of the smallpox hybridized with the bovine leukemia virus, some people believe created AIDS. I think that there's a truth to that myself.
The truth of the matter then is what we do with these things that we create, because we have the co-creative function.
Disease exists in the world, there's no denying it. But many of the illnesses, heart disease, all those things, are a product of astral or emotional misuse of energy.
Well, I believe in that 1,000,000%. I advocate for that. I have healed my own body just by my thought process and the amount of love I gave myself. And I advocate that to people all the time that have illnesses and want to do blame games. Well, I'm sick because of this outside factor or that outside factor or secondhand smoking. No, you brought on yourself, and it's your emotional body. And I try and break the news to them, and so I want to know. There's a point where, even of course with cancer too, there's a point where I get to where I don't say to a lot of people, because a lot of people get shut down right away, and how dare you say I brought cancer on myself? Well, because you did.
Let me
But then that's why I asked about the 20%.
Let me just
'cause
roll this back because you mentioned cancer, okay?
I'm sorry. See, I said that out loud.
I was a kid that was talked into going into engineering at 16 at U of M. And I was gonna be an electrical engineer, a nuclear engineer, you know, something. And at that point, we had just nuked ourselves. We dropped the bombs on Hiroshima, second one on Nagasaki, and a third one on the islands in the Pacific that we don't teach our children about, okay? And if you're into patterns, we're talking about 1, 2, 3, ... infinity, okay? Now, if you accept divine order and God consciousness, then what I'm hypothesizing is that we needed to know how volatile we really are, how dangerous a species we really are. Because when we nuked ourselves, our technology got ahead of us as a species, and we practically extincted another planet. We're alive by the grace of God. You have no idea. And if 9 billion of us are extincting and 1 billion are evolving and awakening, that's part of the mystery, the grace of God. See, we're co-creators. We needed to know how volatile we are. This electricity is so volatile that if you, if you were a shaman, you would have learned as a child that you could stop a person's heart by sending them a zinger. You understand? Electrical energy, and no one would know why that person dropped dead. It's the inverse we're talking about, using the same energy for healing purposes, for raising and evolving and raising our whole species potential to a higher vibrational level. You understand? There's what David's talking about. I learned that you say sometimes death is the cure for what ails you, because you can't overcome the mess you've made of your body.
Yeah, that's kind of like psychokinetic power.
Yeah.
Well, where they measure
But
some
that's why I'm
people
showing you
can
yeah.
move things.
Yeah, that's why I'm showing you this book. That doesn't have to be true. It is, for most of us, it's going to be true, okay? Because we're not in preschool here. Yeah.
Well, getting back to the electrical system, there's more and more reading on neurological disorders, and then, not to confuse things, there's more and more on the autoimmune system, which I don't know if that's electrical also.
That's why I'm trying to tell you that the Lord's Prayer raises the immune system through the chakras. The Lord's
Okay,
Prayer raises, I don't have the chart with me.
Right now.
But I've got a handout for that effect, okay?
Right.
Now, you called it neurological disorders.
Oh,
I'm saying that's what this society does. It uses a negative definition for our experience, which doesn't have to be defined that way. Neurological, the pattern that is formed neurologically through your whole body-mind system
Right.
is what this is about. You
Right,
see what I'm
right.
saying? As soon as you use negative language, it's a slippery slope.
And
Mind
most
is
people
the
think
builder,
like
physical
my
is
doctor's
the-
taking care of me, I'm good. You know, and they're hard to talk to, hard to approach. I'm on medication for that, my doctor's taking care of me, I'm okay.
And the Blue Cross, the insurance, that's why it's interesting that Dean Ornish has slipped through the realms of the block to actually say he can reverse heart disease. If you have been to any conventional doctor and had your heart checked, okay? They're gonna give you, like in preschool, they're gonna give you a book in color of the progress of how your heart disintegrates. And they name all the different levels of disease of your heart till you need, first of all, stents, and then you need a heart transplant. That's how we're indoctrinated. Because we the color, the light, the sound, the language, we have to detox that from our nervous system, and it's not easy. But the ones coming in are past that. Do you understand? Our children are past that. Hopefully, I think there's at least one master being that re-embodied, like Annie Besant said, in a physical body to help humanity. They passed up Devachan, they passed up the bliss state, the heavenly realms, to come back into a body for the purpose of helping humanity.
If they'll listen.
No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Humans don't listen. It's just a slow. Patience is one of the main virtues, you know. Patience, yeah. Forgiveness, mercy, grace. You can ask for intercession too. You got beings everywhere that can help you do a Reiki thing, help you together. See, and the little bit I do at the hospital, when there's family, I'll just say, come on, you know, and hold hands. And we start, everybody's indoctrinated to the Lord's Prayer. You cannot say it, it's in you. We've been indoctrinated to the Lord's Prayer for 2,000 years. Yeah. It's interesting. Time to go home.
Yeah, time to go
Go
home.
home, go home. Gary's gonna have us do a Gary, please have us closing prayer. Yeah. David is the chairman of the Energy Medicine Research Institute we have here in this area. We're the third one in the United States. Gary's our spiritual director. Don Holiday is their secretary. Jen's on the board.
Your role.
Oh, you're come on up here. Yeah, let's.
There's
Oh, there we go.
two prayers we say in Theosophy. Okay. O powers of love, we pledge to you our faithfulness, knowing that only love can redeem the world. We invoke your blessings upon all who strive to serve you. We invoke your blessings upon all who are enduring suffering, that they may discover their enfoldment in your love, even in the midst of their afflictions. We invoke your blessings upon all who are inflicting suffering, that they may be moved to return to you and serve you. O hidden life, vibrant in every atom. O hidden light, shining in every creature. O hidden love, embracing all in oneness. May each who feels himself as one with thee know he is therefore one with every other. Shanti.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah.
Very nice.
All right, feel free to come on the 21st. Call me if you have a question. We'll have more events next year. And thank you so much for being here. And I hope you got a picture of Robert Beck.